this area in particular, probably more than any other area over the last 10 years. This is probably the most interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Jack, what interests you about it?
The water sample had gold in it.
Yeah, let's not forget that.
Craig Tester's drilling data from beneath Oak Island tells a story that nobody on the team expected, and he might be the only person reading it without emotion. He pushed 3 caissons past 200 feet into bedrock. 2 came up empty. The third punched into a void that delivered nothing but water-washed boulders. Then he did something 20 generations of treasure seekers never thought to do. He stepped back from the hole, spread the drilling logs across his desk, moved the target, and started over somewhere else entirely. The numbers don't confirm the legend. They don't destroy it either. They point in a direction nobody was looking, and Craig Tester followed them there. The engineer in the room. Craig Tester and Marty Lagina were roommates at Michigan Technological University back in the 1970s. Both of them studied mechanical engineering. Both of them graduated and went straight into the energy business. Together, they co-founded Terra Energy.
The people with a good education can choose where they work. A lot easier anyway than they used to be able to.
A natural gas company that eventually grew into an operation valued at more than $3 billion before they sold it. After that, Craig built Heritage Sustainable Energy. He also became a founding partner in Oak Island Tours, the company that funds and manages everything happening on the island today. His resume matters because it explains how he thinks. It explains what he sees when he looks at a core sample that everyone else is squinting at for gold flecks. In oil and gas exploration, you drill where the geological data tells you to drill. You stop when the data tells you to stop. You don't keep drilling because you feel lucky. You don't sink another shaft because your grandfather told stories about what might be buried underground. You follow the numbers. If the numbers say the deposit is 2 miles east, you pack up your rig and move 2 miles east.
Actually being there, actually getting down and seeing things is always the best data.
No emotion, no debate. The ground doesn't care about your feelings. That discipline is exactly what Craig brings to Oak Island every single season. He's the resistivity expert on the team. He's the drilling strategist who decides where the next shaft goes down. He's an executive producer on the show itself. But his real role is simpler and more important than any of those titles suggest. Think about it this way. Rick Lagina is the believer. He's driven by the mystery, the romance of a 2-century-old puzzle that's swallowed fortunes and lives. Marty is the strategist. He weighs risk against return, manages timelines, runs the business side of the operation.
My name is Marty Lagina. I'm the CEO of a alternative energy company called Heritage Sustainable Energy right here in Traverse City.
Craig is the operational engineer. He doesn't chase the legend. He chases what the ground is telling him right now, today, in this data set. And in season 13, the ground had a lot to say. 3 shafts, no treasure. The drilling campaign in season 13 was the most ambitious Oak Island has ever seen. The team brought in a 135-ton ROC rig, manufactured by Solitanche Bashi. This is one of the most powerful caisson drilling systems available for this type of deep excavation work. They weren't poking around with hand augers anymore. They weren't running small-diameter boreholes and hoping for the best. They were going deep, and they were going big. The first shaft, designated TPF-1, seized up at just 25 feet. The rig hit compacted backfill so dense it locked the caisson in place and refused to budge. 25 feet. That's barely scratching the surface on an island where the target supposedly sits somewhere below 150 feet. A frustrating start, but not an unusual one. Oak Island's subsurface is riddled with old shafts, collapsed tunnels, and backfilled excavations from 2 centuries of previous attempts. The ground itself is a mess of human interference layered on top of natural geology. They repositioned and tried again. Karma 1 went much deeper, 212 feet into the earth. As the spoils came up bucket by bucket, Gary Drayton examined every load. He ran his detector over the material again and again. Nothing. 212 feet of rock and soil and clay, and absolutely zero indication that anything man-made had ever been placed down there. Not a wood fragment, not a fleck of iron or copper or gold, just Nova Scotia bedrock doing what bedrock does. Peacock 1 reached 211 feet. At around 150 feet, the drill broke through into a void. That sounds dramatic. That sounds like the moment everything changes. But what came out of that void told a different story. Water-washed boulders, Smooth, rounded stones tumbled and polished by underground water flowing through solution channels over centuries. No metal, no artifacts, no sign of human construction, just geology. Those were the 2 deepest shafts ever sunk on Oak Island in the entire history of the search. Neither one found what 200 years of legend and lore insisted was supposed to be waiting down there. For most people, 2 empty shafts at 200 feet would feel like the end of the road. A final answer? There's nothing here. Craig Tester is not most people. The pivot. After 2 caissons bottomed out with nothing to show for it, a lot of people would have pushed harder in the same spot, drilled another shaft 10 feet over, widened the search pattern, tried one more time in the area where everyone has always believed the treasure sits. That's what treasure hunters do. They double down on belief when the evidence disappoints them. Craig looked at the data instead, all of it. The traditional money pit coordinates were not producing results. That much was undeniable after Karma 1 and Peacock 1 came up empty. But something else buried in the data caught his attention. Something that didn't fit the simple narrative of failure. The solution channel water running through the underground system beneath the search area was chemically different from ordinary groundwater. Ian Spooner's geochemical analysis showed elevated levels of elemental silver dissolved in that water. Dr. Fred Michel independently confirmed the presence of both gold and silver traces in the underground water flowing through the formation. Those traces were real. Instruments don't lie about dissolved metal concentrations. The chemistry was clear. Precious metals existed somewhere in that underground water system. The question wasn't whether the traces were genuine. The question was where the source material was located. Where were those metals dissolving from? What was the water flowing past on its way through the bedrock? Craig studied the resistivity data from every survey they'd run. He reviewed the water chemistry results. He went back through the spoil analysis from every borehole they'd drilled that season and in previous seasons. He mapped the flow patterns of the solution channels, and the answer pointed northeast, roughly 40 feet from where they'd been concentrating their deepest efforts, the Peacock area. Borehole H 9.25, drilled to a depth between 198 and 208 feet, brought up core material that was described as gooey and loose. It contained metal fragments embedded in the matrix. This was not the kind of core you pull from undisturbed natural bedrock. This was the kind of material you encounter when you're drilling through ground that has been worked, disturbed, excavated, and filled back in by human hands. This was a course correction based on evidence, not a guess, not a feeling, not someone pointing at a map and saying, let's try over there. It was an engineer synthesizing data from 3 deep caissons, 24 boreholes, water chemistry panels, and resistivity surveys, then calculating a new set of coordinates with precision. 40 feet northeast, that's where the data said to go. So that's where Craig went. What the cores told him. The new drilling location started producing results almost immediately, and the results were significant. The cores pulled from the area designated as Shaft 2 contained wood that dendrochronology dated to 1796. Further analysis of the construction method and materials suggested the shaft itself was built around 1805. That places it squarely in the era of the earliest known searcher shafts, the Onslow Company expedition that followed the original discovery, and its location sat 67 feet northeast of the traditionally accepted money pit coordinates. 67 feet? That's how far off the conventional wisdom had been for 2 centuries. Craig's reaction when the dendrochronology dating came back tells you everything you need to know about how this man operates. He said, well, that's good news. At least we know where it's at. And if this is Shaft 2, we know that we're finally honing in on where that money pit actually was. There was no celebration, no dramatic speech about standing on the verge of the greatest archaeological discovery in North American history. Just a calm, measured acknowledgement that the data had narrowed the search area.
We have reached the bottom of the solution channel,
Yeah.
and we weren't finding much of anything other than the proof of unconsolidated soils.
Charles Barkhouse confirmed the physical evidence from inside the shaft. They were inside a man-made structure. The walls showed clear signs of construction. The fill material was intentional, not natural. That confirmation allowed Craig to narrow the probable location of the original money pit to a radius of roughly 20 feet. After more than 200 years of treasure hunters digging in roughly the right general area, sometimes missing by dozens of feet, sometimes by hundreds, 20 feet represents surgical precision. It means the next shaft they sink has a real chance of intersecting the original deposit, whatever that deposit turns out to be. There was more. A rose head spike recovered from below 167 feet in the Karma 1 shaft, caught the attention of historian Doug Crowell. He linked the spike's style and construction to the period of the Duke d'Anville expedition of 1746. That ill-fated French naval fleet, devastated by storms and disease off the coast of Nova Scotia, has been one of the leading theories for decades about who originally constructed the money pit and why. A single spike doesn't prove that theory. Craig would be the first person in the room to say so. But it's another data point, another piece of evidence logged, cataloged, and placed into the growing mosaic of information. The cores were talking, and Craig was doing what he's always done, listening. Tempered excitement. In an interview during season 13, Craig said something that perfectly captures his entire approach to Oak Island. He said, "At this point, my excitement is tempered." Then he added, "I keep my expectations low." Those two sentences contain more honesty about the search than most people have offered in 200 years of digging. He and Marty have talked openly about their shared philosophy when it comes to discoveries on the island. They don't let themselves ride the emotional roller coaster anymore. They've been at this too long for that. They've seen too many promising finds lead nowhere. Too many exciting moments dissolve into geological explanations. Instead of reacting to each new discovery with hope or despair, they wait. They wait until they get all the data back from the lab. They wait until every test has been run. Then they make decisions based on what the complete picture shows, not on what they hope a single artifact might mean. That is not how treasure hunters talk. That is how engineers talk. And it makes all the difference. Fans of the show have picked up on this over the years. Online discussions consistently describe Craig as the unsung hero of the entire operation. The calm, logical, grounding presence in a room full of people who understandably get excited every time a metal detector chirps or a core sample comes up looking unusual. Rick hears the word treasure, and his mind goes to history, legacy, and vindication for every searcher who poured their life into this island before him. Craig hears the same word, and his mind goes somewhere completely different. Relocate the drilling target 40 feet northeast. Take new core samples at depth. Run the resistivity survey again with updated parameters. It's not that Craig doesn't care about finding treasure. He wouldn't have spent decades of his life and millions of his own dollars funding this search if he didn't care about the outcome. But caring about the outcome and letting that desire dictate your methodology are two entirely different things. Craig cares deeply about Oak Island. He just refuses to let that caring compromise the engineering discipline that makes him effective. Every season, someone finds something exciting in the spoils. A coin from the 1700s, a piece of antique jewelry, a fragment of parchment or leather, and every season the team gathers around a table and speculates about what each discovery might mean for the overall mystery. Craig sits in those meetings. He listens carefully to every theory. But when it's his turn to speak, he talks about depth readings and resistivity anomalies and core composition percentages. He translates excitement back into actionable data points that can guide the next drilling decision. That's his function on this team. That's always been his function. And it is the reason the search is still producing meaningful, measurable progress after all this time instead of spinning in circles over the same patch of ground. Craig Tester reads cores. He interprets resistivity surveys. He makes drilling decisions based on what the ground actually says, not on what 200 years of legend promises should be there. Season 13 handed him the deepest data set any team has ever pulled from beneath Oak Island. 2 empty shafts at 200 feet didn't discourage him, they informed him. He moved the target, he adjusted the coordinates, and he started pulling cores from a new location that immediately began telling a very different story. The drilling continues. Not because anyone on that team blindly believes treasure is definitely waiting in the bedrock, because the data hasn't said stop. The water chemistry shows dissolved precious metals. The dendrochronology dates align with the historical timeline. The man-made shaft structures are exactly where the revised coordinates predicted they would be. Every data point says keep going. That's the difference between a treasure hunter and an engineer. A treasure hunter keeps going because he can't accept the idea of walking away. An engineer keeps going because the evidence still points forward. Craig Tester is still investigating, and the data is still talking. If you want to see how far this team's willingness to follow evidence can take them, we covered Rick Lagina's trip to the Azores, where he sat down with an archaeologist who drew connections between Oak Island and a network of sites scattered across the Atlantic. That story takes the mystery well beyond Nova Scotia, and it's worth your time.